What are bottles? What are bottles? Water bottles. Water bottles. Water bottles. Water bottles are really good for being hydrated. Hello pals and welcome back to another video. Today is one a lot of you are going to be really excited for, and that's because we're talking about Assassination Rogues. I get asked about Assassination probably 100 times a day on my stream, so hopefully I can clear up all your questions and let you guys know my thoughts on it. So let's just jump right into it. This is going to be a quick one. So I've kind of noted down a couple things that I want to cover, and those are going to be legendary choice, talents, my conduit / soulbind, stat priority, and the poisons you're going to be using in different situations playing Assa. So let's jump into those. So right off the bat, in terms of legendary, I actually have not chosen to run with any of the specific legendaries you get from the assassination. I've heard that this one could be good, or maybe Doomblade. I think both of these are just minimal additional damage and they don't really do much. I really think playing around MA with every single rogue spec is the call right now in terms of PvP. I've been running MA, I just got my 235 on my bracers, and you can actually do something really cool with this that I'm going to talk about. So this is the choice for legendary. Next up, I want to go over my talents. I have messed around with these a bunch. The talents that I'm running with Assa right now looks like this. The only one that you could maybe change is if you're playing 2v2. Maybe you'll get more value out of leeching or cheat death. Not so much elusiveness unless you have a healer. In terms of double DPS, that is, I would not run elusiveness. I do think Eternal Bleeding gives the most value here. Down here, I think Venom Rush is much more valuable just for those short energy chunks that you can get when you're playing double DPS. But if you're playing with a healer in 2v2 or 3v3, Alacrity is just going to give you a lot more haste overall. Once you ramp this up, you'll kind of play off of it most of the game. So this will be much more valuable. For the honor talents, I think Smoke Bomb's always a go-to. These honor talents aren't as good as Subtlety, so you could go for Death from Above, but I like to go System Shock just so on my finishers I have that big slow, and then maneuverability so I have more mobility with my sprint, since we only have one Shadow Step. Talking about Conduits, and I guess just Covenant altogether, I think for every rogue spec, Night Phase is the go-to best right now. I am currently playing with the Seed Pod, but that's only because I use Naya for my Subtlety build. I do think either Naya or Dreamweaver are both good picks here. Naya might be a bit better, but the Conduits that I go after here are actually going to vary a bit. I've been messing around with this one called Maim Mangle. This is going to make your Mutilates just hit harder. Cloaked in Shadows is, of course, a very big go-to. And Septic Shock actually gives you a lot more burst when you do use your Sepsis, especially playing around your Shiv. So if you don't know, your Shiv will increase the target, the nature damage that your target will take. Sepsis does nature damage, so having this will give you a huge burst chunk. You can actually also stack this up with another conduit down here, well-placed steel, and it makes that Shiv damage increase by an additional, X%. For the conduit that I have, it's 13%. So some people could play well-placed steel and Septic Shock instead of the main one, and you can have really big sepsis damage. But this is dispellable as a poison. Curian people can get it off with a vial. It's not super reliable to play completely around the sepsis, so I do like to take this one for flat damage. Then in my finesse slot, I like to pick up quick decisions, primarily because I feel like only having one Shadow Step charge, the cooldown reduction helps give us more mobility, and then the range is nice as well. Now, in terms of stat priority, a little bit different. I think for all rogue specs, still, you really, really want to pump versatility. Versatility is so powerful. It gives us damage and tankiness. This is like the best thing you can have as a rogue in PvP. We're very squishy, and it gives us more burst. The difference between Assa and Subtlety is that Mastery is still good for us, but we really want to stack up haste. So I'm going to say the second best stat for Assa is probably haste. This is going to make not only our attack speed faster, but it's going to make our dots tick faster, and it's going to make our energy regen faster. Following that, you could probably take Mastery and then Crit. The last kind of general thing I'm going to get into before I show you guys the actual burst, the burst opener, is just poisons. So I have actually played around with both Deadly and Wound Poison as my main lethal poison, and I think it's safe to say Deadly does a ton of damage. Almost always go Deadly Poison, but if you're playing with a second DPS partner, so for example double DPS 2v2, or if you're playing 3v3, I think you'll get more value out of Wound Poison since you're not the only person doing damage primarily. It's going to make the healing reduction kind of more powerful than the damage loss. But if you're playing like single DPS with a healer, Deadly will actually do a lot of damage for you. And then Mind Numbing and Crippling, you could probably always go Crippling in PvP. That's probably going to be your safe bet. Okay, now, so a lot of people ask me, is Assa viable in Arena? And my answer to that is yes, Assa in Arena is absolutely viable. But there is a very big difference between something being viable and something being the meta. There is a reason why high-rated sub-rogues are prioritizing playing Subtlety right now, and that's because, in general, it is much, much better. If we compare Subtlety to Assassination, Subtlety has far more utility. You have 2 Shadow Step charges. This is going to make you way more mobile. You have access to the PvP talent Shadowy Duel, which is one of our best defensives to save our lives by, dueling an enemy healer, or even one of our best offensive spells to lock down to secure a kill. Not only just those, but our access to stuns. When you're playing Assa, the only time you can multi-stun is if you re-stealth or vanish, whereas when you're playing sub, you can Shadow Dance and triple cheap shot every single time. Not to mention that you play around 2 Shadow Dance charges now, which is nuts. If you're playing as Assa, you only really have your kidney. While we're comparing the two of them though, what are the upsides of Assa? And there's only really one of them, and that is that we have a higher PvP kind of sustained DPS. You'll be able to put out a lot more pressure. The problem with this is that we're sacrificing all this utility from playing Subtlety for the damage benefit of Assa, and Assa doesn't do enough damage that it's really worth doing that. You could kind of compare like an Assassination Rogue to something like a Windwalker Monk or a Warrior right now, and if you compare them, Windwalker probably has around the same utility as Assassination, if not more. A Warrior definitely has way more utility, but a Warrior and a Windwalker Monk are going to do double or triple your damage. There's really just no big point in trying to force Assa to work. You're not going to outburst sub-rogues. You might have more sustained burst. You might have a longer burst window, but it's really, really rough. Another thing to point out about Assassination is that when you're playing Assa, especially in the current game, a lot of players are playing Kyrian. And as you know, Kyrian is going to have this file that's going to remove all bleeds, poisons, diseases, all that stuff off. So every time you get all your big dots up and you're really ready to pressure, anybody just by playing Kyrian can counter you extremely hard. So that's one of the big downsides. Anyways, let's get into the juicy stuff. I am going to show you guys my burst opener that I've kind of come up with. There's a couple ways you can vary with it, but Assa actually has some pretty nutty burst, especially playing around the crit. So something I want to talk about with MA really quickly is just dots in general and crit right before I show you this. And that is, when we are in stealth, we permanently have the legendary effect, increasing our crit by 100%. So if you look at my crit chance is 115%. So back in the day, the way that dots would work on World of Warcraft is basically, if I opened with a Garrote, since I had 100% crit as I applied it, the dot would crit every single time for the entire duration. Now, what Blizzard has done is they've actually changed this, so your dots will actually roll off of your current stats. So as you can see, the dot's not critting. It has a 15% chance to crit each time. This was called snapshotting. Basically, you would want to apply your dots when you had a really, really big burst cooldowns up, and then your dots would hit hard the whole time. But now, since dots actually roll off of your current stats, we can play around the fact that we have this crit legendary. So for example, if I were to go stealth, apply a Garrote, and then stop hitting, you'll see that it will crit during the MA window, and then now it's down to a 15%. So these may or may not crit, but if I go stealth again, every single one is going to crit, because while I'm in stealth, my crit chance is back above 100. So now I'm going to tell you how you can actually use this to your advantage. And most of that comes from offensively vanishing. But I'll go ahead, I'll show you my opening rotation, and I'll show you how we can integrate an offensive vanish into this to really make our big dots crit 100% of the time. Is this really smart to do in Arena? Probably not in 3v3, but offensively vanishing is something that we've seen a lot more in Shadowlands, especially with people playing around the crit legendary, and it can actually do some crazy numbers. So the opening burst rotation that I like to do for Assa is going to be a Mark for Death Kidney into a Vendetta Garrote. You're going to follow that with a Sepsis, and then if you're playing Subterfuge or not, you either ambush or mutilate. This will fill your combo points. You're going to play full Rupture, and then you can throw a Shiv in at the very end. This is going to increase the nature damage they take from Sepsis and your deadly poison, and then you can vanish. This vanish is purely aggressive. You might not need to at all, but it will make sure that your dots continue to crit if you reopen up for at least 4 seconds, or if you just choose to stay in stealth, they will continue to crit the entire time. So let's go ahead and actually do that. So mark for Death Kidney into a Vendetta Garrote, then you're going to Sepsis into an Ambush, put up a full Rupture, Shiv, and Vanish right before the kidney ends. As you can see, the dots are doing crazy DPS. If you do want to reopen, it can be an Ambush into an Envenom, and then eventually just mutilates into Envenoms. And you can really do some crazy numbers. You know, as you can see, the DPS is really up there. Eventually, with DPS as Assa, you're going to want to maintain your Rupture Garrote and Slice and Dice. But yeah, that's in terms of a burst window. Let's go ahead and we'll break that down in slow motion. Okay, guys, so in slow motion, the opener is a Mark for Death Kidney into a Vendetta Garrote. You're going to follow this up with a Sepsis and then Mutilate or Ambush. It'll fill your combo points. Throw a full Rupture on the target, and then sneak in a Shiv. Now you can Vanish out. This will make sure all of your dots keep critting. If you want to maintain the pressure, you can instantly reopen. You're going to open with an Ambush, follow that with an Envenom, and kind of just spam Ambushes and Mutilates into Envenoms during the crit window. And then you can kind of break into your normal rotation, which is kind of maintaining S&D, maintaining Rupture, and maintaining Garrote. So anyways, pals, all in all, is Assassination Rogue viable right now? Yes, absolutely it's viable. Is it the best thing that you can play? Absolutely not. I would probably just try to practice subtlety and get better at it. Or you know what, if you're really, really a big fan of Assa, make it work. But I will say, if you really like the Assassination Rogue playstyle, you might have a lot more fun actually not playing a rogue right now and playing something like a warrior, Windwalker Monk, maybe even an unholy DK. But yeah, Assa's just in a really rough spot right now, even with the buffs. Anyways, pals, I will see you guys in the next video. If you want to catch me on stream, you guys can catch me at twitch.tv/ipalamore. Daily streaming 1 to 2 times a day over there. I now have a Discord that's in the description. I have a Twitter account that I use a little bit that I just made. And then also, no, that's about it. That's about it. Well, you guys probably closed the video by now anyways, so I guess there's not really a point in me talking words. But yeah, I guess if you're still here, you can leave a comment and tell me that you're still here and you saw the part at the end of the video of this part where I'm talking to you. And but I don't think anybody will see that. I'll see you guys in the next video.